Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for braving the rain this evening and joining us here for Dance Talks for our upcoming performances. My name is Angie Lane, and I'm the Chief Development Officer. And before I introduce our panel, just a quick reminder to please silence all cell phones and smartwatches. If you need to leave the theater at any time, I want to remind you there are exits on both sides directly behind the stadium seating. Tonight, our panel will discuss the art of partnering, covering the basics and mechanics to the types of partnering seen on stage, which you will see during In the Night. In the Night runs from February 27th through March 9th. Driving our discussion is General Manager Kelly Gilson. Kelly has been with Houston Ballet for more than 10 years, playing a key role in managing behind-the-scenes artistic details. She brings a wealth of dance knowledge and is a passionate advocate for the art form. Kelly, we're so grateful to have you here this evening. On our panel this evening is Ballet Master Ian Cassidy. Ian joined our artistic team as Ballet Master in 2020, but before that he had a 22-year career as a dancer with the company and trained at the Houston Ballet Academy. He has danced and coached a wide variety of roles, including the works we'll discuss tonight. Also joining us are principal dancers Beck-Ann Sisk and Chase O'Connell. Beck-Ann and Chase have danced together in many ballets, including the upcoming works, and they both joined the company in 2022 from Ballet West. Beck-Ann trained with the Longview Ballet Theater, the Rock School for Dance Education, and Ballet West II. Chase trained at the Karov Academy of Ballet in Washington, D.C., and the Royal Ballet School in London, before joining Paris Opera Ballet in 2011, and then later Ballet West II. Thank you for being here tonight. And thank all of you for being here tonight. Your generous support of Houston Ballet makes all of this possible and keeps our company strong. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and hello. I'm so thrilled to be here. As Angie mentioned, one of the highlights of our upcoming mixed repertory program entitled In the Night is the use of partnering. So the program showcases the wide range of partnering utilized in ballet, and it just presented a wonderful opportunity for us to delve deeper into this nuanced world that's so integral to ballet. So in tonight's conversation, we hope to offer insight into this critical function of the art form and gain a better understanding of the behind-the-scenes efforts taken on by the dancers to make the partnering we see on stage so effortless. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in, and I want to start with what I'm calling a partnering 101. And what is partnering? Can we define it? What does it look like? How does it work? And so I'm going to start, well, I'll just open it up. Who wants to start with what is partnering? What is it? How does it work? Ian, you look like you are ready to discuss. Go into the basics.
In defining partnering, I guess anytime you have more than one person in a dance where you are relying on each other to create something that's more than the sum of its parts, I would say. And it doesn't need to be big lifts and lots of turns and things like that. Anytime you have a connection, even if it's just a hand or sharing weight in one way or another, where you have, I'm probably jumping ahead, but leading and follow through. Anytime you're connected and relying on one another to create a dance, I would say.
And the structure of what we would call partnering is wide. It's not just, I would say, it's not just male and female. I mean, Beck-Ann, you probably had experience, or maybe Chase too, like experience partnering not just with one partner, but maybe with multiples. Would you say that the structure is broader than that, than just two people?
It certainly opens up a lot of possibilities the more people and limbs you add.
Yeah, I mean, it can be two females and two males. I've seen it all, and I've actually partnered, which is really difficult. Something that doesn't come very natural to me is being the, what's the word I'm looking for?
The base.
The base. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just like whenever you have a connection with someone on stage or in the studio, like I feel that that's also partnering. Even if we're not touching, it's that connection you have.
Well, let's talk about training, because I think that looks a little bit different for everyone, but I think what many people don't realize is a lot of training has to go into making partnering successful. So let's start over there with Chase. And when did you start training for partnering, and what did that look like?
I guess like official training when I was 13, because I did like jazz competitions, so I did like little fish dives when I was like 4 years old, which didn't really count. But yeah, when I was 13, you just had a girl and she would stand in passe and you would lean her forward, lean her back, lean her side, lean her back, trying to find her weight and trying to find that balance of where she needs to be. And then you just progress from there, do like a single turn, do a promenade. Like you're just trying to figure out how to find a girl's weight and to help them dance easier sometimes.
And then for the girl, it's like he was saying, how you would just stand on point and have to trust to give him your weight. It's so hard to not put your foot down. So you have to learn to just let it be and let them find it and how to help you.
I had a very strict Russian teacher, and his rule was if the girl put her foot down in the pirouette, she was kicked out of class. But if she kept the passe all the way down, the boy was kicked out of class.
That's a creative way of training. And so I guess when I hear you talk about that, it seems like the progression for partnering before you get to do the big lifts and the throws, it's pretty slow. I mean, what you said you started at 13. I mean, before you got to do any of the crazy stuff that are really exciting that we like to see on stage, I mean, that was years of progressing. I mean, how many years did you just do passe and just finding the balance point?
I would say 3 years. Like, and sometimes it'd just be waltzing across the floor. Like, you think that's easy, but then you're doing it with someone else, trying to figure out how they step and how they move. And so it's a whole other technique, not just on yourself, but learning how someone else dances and how someone else moves to match them.
Feels like there's such a foundation that has to be built, and I think you alluded to that, and I think we'll talk more about some of the hidden things that come into partnering that has to be built before you can move on to more advanced. I want to give a shout out to the Houston Ballet Academy. If you're not aware, such an emphasis is placed on partnering in the training that we give to dancers here. If you're not familiar with Claudio Munoz, he's renowned for his skills in training in partnering, and for both our young gentlemen and our young women, and also the emphasis the Academy has placed on the wellness programs that we offer, the strength and conditioning classes. Those are all so critical to supporting the development of our partnering skills, as well as the overall skills of our dancers. So Ian, now being on the other side in the studio as a ballet master, I just wondered if you could speak to our Academy dancers, and how are you seeing this emphasis on training for partnering as they come up and work with you in the studio?
Well, basically, by the time they've come through the academy and are joining the company, or they're in HB2, they know how to partner. So by the time that they come to us, they already know what they're doing, and that it's a real strong foundation that we can build on, that choreographers can build on. I mean, that's one of the things, is that they do get choreographed on, which more often than not is not just straightforward stand and move from side to side, or sky's the limit. Anything that a choreographer can dream up, the dancer's job is to try and make it a reality. So the Academy does a fantastic job of training them and preparing them for professional dancing and choreography and everything they're going to encounter.
One of the things I think is really interesting and so wonderful because of the growth we've had in the Academy, the number of students we're so fortunate to have enrolled, is that partnering training may be a little bit challenging if you don't have enough male dancers to partner with the female dancers in these early partnering classes. And I don't know if any of you experience that on either side.
And that's generally the case. So the guys pretty much just go in a circle. You don't get a rest. There's 16 ladies and 10 guys or something, and you're just back and forth, which is really great because you get to work with a bunch of different people, and you just repetition.
So we've talked a little bit about the basic training and partnering 101, but I think, as Becky Ann started alluding to, there's more than just brute strength. We need to look beyond the muscle. And so I think I'd love to talk about what the mechanics or the skills that are kind of behind the scenes, that are really masked from the audience, that are really important to being a successful partner. And maybe I'll start with Beck-Ann, since you had already started talking about some of these elements, but we were masking the mechanics from the audience point of view.
I feel like this is always a hard thing for me to talk about because I have been so lucky in my career. When I first joined Ballet West, my first job, I was immediately put with a principal dancer who was a very good partner. And then from then on, I was always put with people who naturally were great partners. So it was hard I was just told what to do, and I never really knew what to tell my partner what I needed. So I just sort of learned to really rely on my partner. So maybe this is a better thing for you guys to talk about.
I would say that it's more about coordination than it is about strength. Because you can have a lot of people with huge muscles and just can just toss a girl, but there's something about just like using your legs or just like, I don't even know, like it's just, sometimes it just feels like you're dancing yourself with her and it just glides right in while some people are trying to like grip down and use everything they have to do it. So it is a different thing than just strength. I mean, strength definitely does help in a lot of things, but I would say it's more about coordination than anything else.
Yeah, coordination and sensitivity to your partner, to the steps that you're doing, 100% more than strength. I mean, strength comes into it, obviously. Some things you just have to power through. But the majority of it is technique, coordination, sensitivity, and really adapting in the moment to something, because it's not always, it doesn't always go textbook perfect, and a big part of it is adapting and correcting without it looking like a correction. So it's about going with the momentum, but thinking just far enough ahead that you can direct the energy where it needs to go naturally and without, hard stops and abrupt slamming on the brakes and things like that.
Feels like there might be a lot of nonverbal communication that happens during partnering. Like that's a
Yes.
mechanic that people aren't seeing because it's happening internally. Maybe it's just with the eyes. Maybe it's with how you touch or guide.
Yeah, there's a lot in the touch and in the sharing of center of gravities, using counterbalance, and in the hands, if the particular moves are in the hands, there's a way to signal what's going to happen, or where you want something, where you need something to go. That doesn't. It's hard. It's a really kind of a hard thing to explain, but it's the initial impulse, and that's the thing that you figure out as you're rehearsing a particular piece is, where do I lead? Where do you lead? Where do I pick up where you left off? Where are we exactly in sync together? How do I complement what you're doing right now? How do I free you up to do everything that you need to do while still being a part of it, dancing with you, but not overpowering, what we're trying to show.
Yeah, I would say like there's a lot of trust also involved, because you want the girl to be able to dance as freely as she wants to, and she can only do that if she knows that you're with her and helping, and that she can rely on you sometimes. Yeah.
I would just say with partnerships, it's about intuition. They have to have the same intuition as you, and sometimes I feel like my partner knows before I do what I need or where I'm going to go, and yeah, it's just all about trust.
Yeah, I always think it's the guy's job to know his steps and her steps. Like, you need to know what she needs, where she needs to be going, what she needs to do to help her do those things while also taking care of yourself.
It's really just a completely different skill set than dance. Partnering is just, it's totally different.
One of the things I hear, Ian, you talk about sometimes, I think this a good example of a mechanic is grips. And maybe you could explain to the audience sort of what that means and how important grips are and how much probably time are spent, especially when you're creating new partnering or new choreography. What does that specifically mean?
Grips can either mean like a hand-to-hand grip, or it can be the guy's grip on a waist. Yeah, there's a million different ways to turn things. I mean, you come up with some pretty interesting grips and handholds and things like that. But sometimes we're talking about hand to hand. Sometimes we're talking about hand on waist or wherever we need to be to make the move happen. But they're extremely important and generally a little bit different depending on who you're working with because of proportions and just the way weight is distributed, and especially when you're talking about aerial lifts and things like that, or things that rely on balance. But it's a little bit of a whole language in itself, especially going from one very simple grip like that, and then if we're going to turn, we have to find a way to make that happen and come back to where we were or go into the next thing as seamlessly and smoothly as possible, generally while trying to maintain contact the whole time. And I think that's a big part of what you're talking about masking things is being able to keep some kind of contact while changing position or flipping completely in the other direction.
Yeah, it's funny learning ballets because we'll all be around the video watching. The girl starts learning their steps, and all the guys are trying to figure out where each hand is on the girl. Like, is it on a pit, is it on a thigh, is it on a waist? And you're trying to see on that video how to make those shapes work.
So as we talk about training and these mechanics, like how do you train for that? How do you train for the coordination and the grips that might change with each different ballet or each different piece of choreography? The answer may be really simple, but it may just be practice and rehearse over and over. But are there other ways, to really enhance how you work on the grips and the coordination, the physicality that's needed?
Well, one thing actually going back to the academy here that the dancers have access to is Aki. I'm not sure what his... Yeah, no, but his actual title, he's strength and body conditioning, yes. And he comes up with all kinds of really cool ways to try and mimic partnering or lifting with different grips and different weights and all kinds of different stuff, practicing proper technique and stuff. So that gives them a good foundation for that kind of thing. But as far as grips go, there is a sort of reference and standard technique when it comes to traditional classical ballet and things that are more straightforward like that. But once you get into choreography, then you just have to figure out, and it's trial and error, and it's experience and repetition and practice.
And I think it's good, I feel like when you were young, just having someone you could trust and work on, and you just go into a studio and just try as many things as possible and try to figure out yourself before you got into a studio in front of everybody else, and then it's too late. Like, just trying to work on how you can get better and just figure out how everything works beforehand.
Yeah. And having a spot, having someone there, or more than one person there to help, especially when you're talking about grips and some lift that's no one's ever done before.
Yeah, exciting. I think it's a nice segue as we talk about like the skillful support that's needed between the partners, and we've sort of hinted at little things. So I want to talk a little bit about like what makes a great partner. We've defined it a little bit. But I'm going to start with Beck Ann, because you've already started talking a little bit about what made a great partner for you, but I want to hear from our gentleman as well.
Well, communication is important. You have to be able to talk to your partner, tell them what you need, what they need from you. But really, I feel like the big thing is just trust and that intuition of just like there to support, so that I feel like I can dance and they're behind me letting me dance.
For me, sometimes a great partner is someone I can have fun with. Like, just in the studio relaxed, we can just talk, we can share our thoughts on things, and someone who can push me and do things on stage I'm not expecting and help me Because sometimes you can just get to partnering doing the same thing every day. You know exactly what you're going to do, but then you have someone that can just do something a little more extreme or something that can put you on your toes, which is a lot of fun on stage.
If you don't know, Ian is well regarded as an excellent partner by many members of the Houston Ballet Company. So I am curious how he's going to answer this, because his reputation precedes him.
No big secret for me. Trust is a big, huge part of it. And just from a technical standpoint, musicality, if we can feel the music the same way and be on the same page with the pulse and the impulse of how something happens, that goes a long way towards having a really good partnership. But trust, connection, being in the moment, being willing to rely on each other and fully, I guess that's just trust. Fully support each other and be supported.
Well, there's risk involved when we talk about partnering. There's risk of injury, of falling, and so if you don't have that kind of relationship with your partner, that could be really challenging.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that you just can't achieve the vision of the choreographer or the idea of the movement with if you're, if she was just completely not allowing me to take her weight, or that movement might then get cut short because she couldn't reach as far as she needed to if she was on her own weight. So there's a lot of things that depend on that trust.
I think there's probably an impact artistically too into your performance and how you go on stage. So I want to talk a little bit in that vein about compatibility and partners, because it's great to hear what each of you think of. This is a great partner. This is what I need. This is what really helps me. But what happens if that's not aligned with your partner? If you're just not that compatible in how you work, physically or even mentally and emotionally. So I'm going to start with Chase and just sort of. What are the challenges, or have you faced challenges in having a partner that maybe just doesn't have an alignment with you in how you approach it? And how did you recover from that?
I'm lucky enough to not have that many challenging partners. I'm trying to think if I've had anyone. But it's just, even if someone's challenging, especially for a guy, you just have to say yes, thank you. Just try to do as much you can for them, even if you just want to bite your tongue. But it is just about, especially for the guy, to make sure that she feels comfortable and safe. And if she doesn't feel that way, then you need to figure out how to make her feel that way.
Again, have you ever had a situation where you felt it was challenging? I mean, not to the person sitting to your left?
No, I mean, there's always partners that you connect with more and others that you don't connect with as much, and that's just life. And I feel like in the end, you're both trying to get the same goal, which is to make beautiful art on stage. So you do align eventually. It might be difficult and take more practice and work and just sort of learning to deal with each other. But I mean, yeah, there's always ups and downs with everyone, and not everyone is your favorite person to work with, but you make it work,
That's life and for everyone, right? We're all adapting and learning to work with different kinds of people. Well, I want to talk a little bit about in kind of the drama side of partnering, is what happens when things go wrong. We have all this preparation, you've had this training, you've done all these rehearsals, and then maybe there's an injury or an illness and you have to switch partners. Maybe you're on stage and something didn't work or is not working. So Ian, do you want to start? We can kind of go down the line, but just...
I mean, because that kind of stuff happens. You end up with a different partner than you started out with, and it's just a matter of all those things we've been talking about: communication and adapting to your new partner, deciding, my partner and I did this one step this way, but she did it with her partner a different way. How are we going to mesh these, or just more often than not, if there's a time crunch, it's just okay. Tell me what you need, which is not really different than how you start the process with someone that you plan on dancing with on the stage. It's just that it's condensed into a short amount of time.
Maybe day of.
Maybe day of, yep. Then it's just same thing, practice, get in the studio and work it out.
Becky, has there ever been an instance where you've been on stage and had a misconnection, or
I'm trying
how
to
did
think. I
you
mean,
react
yes.
in the moment?
I'm trying to think if I
Did
can
you block those
remember
memories out of your mind?
a specific time. I mean, things go wrong all the time. Like, especially on stage, costumes. It's a whole new element. Lights. You can't see as well. You'll miss hands, miss a grip. I mean, and sometimes I tend to get lost in the music and the choreography, and maybe I decide to change things sometimes.
Chase, you can expand upon that later.
He's like, what are you doing? But, yeah, I mean, you just learn to communicate. Yeah.
So, Chase, what do you do when your partner gets lost in the music and in the
You
moment?
go 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I feel like it's just sometimes you can get upset if someone doesn't do the right thing, but you also have to realize like it is a live art and things do happen, and you also are making mistakes sometimes, so you can't just, you have to adapt. You have to live in the moment. You have to see each other and just move past what happened. And that's what's so fun about it too. It's like you're in this 3-hour show, and maybe like in the first 5 minutes, something went wrong immediately, but you have the next 2.5 hours just to move past and to keep going and to make the show great. And that's what's so exciting.
I think it just brings us always back to that training, even the rehearsals, how much repetition the dancers have to go through, but it's building that confidence, it's building that moment of adaptability and changing really quickly. That all comes from that time in the studio and the foundation that you've built since that training. Yeah. Any other challenges? Ian feels like he has more. You just want the microphone back.
No, it's just like Chase was saying that you just have to make something out of it, first of all, depending, recover and repair and create something out of that lift that you caught facing the wrong direction, or, it just kind of, you have to play it off like it was meant to be that way from the beginning. And then, be a goldfish and move on, as Ted Lasso would say. Because, like I said, a lot of times, 3-act ballet is a long way to go, and something happens in the very beginning, you cannot be thinking about it the whole time, because chances are something else will go wrong if you get hung up. So you just have to forget about it and move on.
And sometimes it's great because it makes you really live in that moment. Like, it makes you really focus on exactly what's happening in this world, and you're not just have this pre-prepared choreography and rehearsal and show. It's what's happening right here, right now. That's so much fun.
And there's a million things that Becky Ann kind of touched on this, because we prepare and prepare and prepare and repeat and repeat and repeat, trying to create this perfect, chipping away at this sculpture in the studio. And then you get onto the stage, and it's a completely different environment, a completely different set of factors. You have costume, live music, you have lights, you have even the air from the audience coming in when that curtain first goes up is dry and cold, and how do you deal with that? Or if we're at the outdoor theater, there's a million different things. So staying in the moment and being okay with that, and just knowing that it's going to be different every time, even though we're trying to do the same thing.
It's such an exciting part of ballet, and the dynamic that presents itself when we have partnering, and all the mental and emotional agility, as well as the physicality of it. But it's I find it fascinating, when we could probably talk about all the mechanics and training and everything all night with partnering. But I do want to talk about the program that we have upcoming, and the 3 ballets that are on that program. And I want to spend some time just comparing and contrasting the dancers we have up here and their experience in the ballets and the type of partnering that they're going to be performing, and just their experience. So I'm going to start with Becky Ann and Chase, and with one of the ballets on the program, which is entitled In the Night, not to be confused with the title of the entire evening, which is also In the Night. But In the Night is a ballet by Jerome Brabants, and it's beautiful. We haven't done it in quite a long time, so it's exciting to have it return. But you've been in the studio rehearsing it. I don't know if this is your first time performing it. Oh, fantastic. Well, we have a little clip, not of Beckon and Chase, but of, I believe the pas de deux that you will be doing and in performances that we just want to show you real quick as a teaser. It's a sneak peek of what's to come. But I'd love to hear from both of you, just your experience in learning this ballet, and I think the aspects of partnering that we've already talked about tonight, which you can see it's not even just the physical connection, but clearly there's an emotional connection, and what that experience has been like for you so far in the studio.
It's been lovely to get to work on In the Night. It's a dream ballet that you hear about, and everyone wants to be able to have a chance to perform it. But I feel like with this experience, it's been really lovely. Anita came and set it on us, and she gave us the steps and then sort of let us find our characters ourselves, which I really enjoyed kind of diving into that. But we're in an argument in it, so it's a lot of pushing and pulling. And again, a lot of trust.
Yeah, so each part of this is kind of a different vibe. Like the young lovers at the beginning, and then the sophisticated couple, and then you have the couple who is in an argument. And so it's kind of fun because you have these moments where you are yelling at each other, but then you also have to have these soft caresses and be able to help each other in the movement. And so it is this very like up and down choreography also.
When you're learning a piece like that, which clearly is emotionally driven, how do you approach that in the studio? Obviously, you're going to learn the steps and how the mechanics of that all works, but do you talk about the emotional component behind it and how that's going to play out on stage, or how that might change the movement that you're doing?
Yeah, what was difficult about this piece was trying not to just be angry the whole time, because there are moments when, just in life, you fight and then you're like, oh, but then you fight again. So finding those moments and how to portray that in dancing together. So having sharper moments, more dramatic, and then softer where we dance together more, not against each other.
And it was hard because you've done so many dramatic roles in our lives that you want to just go there immediately. But Anita was really like, let the steps speak for themselves. It's not this overacting, just kind of do the movement and that will portray the story enough. And so that was also hard to do.
Yeah, it was always less eyebrows, less eyebrows.
And with Robin's choreography, I'm not sure how many other Robin's ballets you've been fortunate enough to dance, because he has a classical base, but then he kind of expounds upon that. He changes it a little bit. It comes out of that classical frame and that classical nature. And did you find that with this In the Night pas de deux, and how did you enjoy working maybe outside of just the very classical? It's not Sleeping Beauty. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, this is our third Robin's ballet. And what's fun is that it is kind of back to the basics, like learning how to waltz with a partner. And it's easy to forget, like we're wrapped around in a hug and you're trying to waltz together, and that is tricky in itself. Yeah, I feel like it's not just a classical pas de deux. It has its story, it has its moments. We feel like real people, which is very nice.
Another ballet that Beckett and Chase are preparing is Celts, which is by Lila York, and it's also been a long time, I think almost 20 years since we've done Celts at Houston Ballet. So really, really exciting to bring that back into the repertoire. So I'd love to hear your experience on Celts and maybe how that differed from the Robin's Ballet.
Completely different. Celts is completely different. And she said in Celts we are two-dimensional. So everything's very flat for us and not dreamy and playful at all. And then what's our signature step? The whirling dervish.
Whirling dervish.
That's our thing.
Just spin as fast as possible.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come to the show to see that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's like almost classical, almost not. Like there's little flexes here, little turned in moments here. I can't really describe like the technique behind it.
But if anyone's a fan of Lord of the Dance, come see Celts. It's so good.
Yes, that's her plug for coming to see Celts. But do you find that exciting to be able to explore sort of the different nuances of partnering, even in the same evening program, of these different ballets?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're together in all three of the ballets, so it's fun just to, in our partnership, to have this variety in one night and in one program, and get the classical, the Irish, and then Stanton's choreography. It really pushes you and makes you learn a lot about yourself and how you dance and how you partner and about your partners too.
They're all three very different ballets, so it's been a lot of fun every hour switching it up, working on them.
And you have Sleeping Beauty in the mix as well.
Yes.
Which is a little bit different than the mix.
Very
round.
classical.
So really running the whole range of partnering in this upcoming series. Well, I do want to talk about the third ballet on the program, which is Menenius by Stanton Welch. So we have a little clip of that too. So I think Beckon and Chase are you preparing that pas de deux as well, or you do the second one? You
I do
blue.
that one with Jacqueline and then Blue Girl with her.
Yeah. So in Menenius, in the second movement, it's two pas de deux that happen right back to back. And as Ian was featured in that video. And so I'm going to punt it over to Ian to talk about Menenius specifically. And I think that second movement and the partnering that's utilized in it, but I think it's interesting how the partnering changes maybe between the first pas de deux and the second pas de deux.
Yes, emotionally it kind of flips from a relationship that's a little bit more tumultuous and uneven into the second half of it, which is much more together and harmonious. But as far as the actual technical partnering of it goes, you can see it's a lot of unusual grips and different ways to take weight to move across the stage. So it's very interesting partnering and very difficult, but very very fulfilling and rewarding to do because you can put a lot of emotion into it.
I feel like it must be mentally challenging as well as physically challenging to kind of go from the red girl pas de deux into the blue. And I mean, maybe Chase, you can speak to that too. Just how do you have to change your mindset? Like you're in the middle of the ballet, but it's such a different emotional approach.
I think it blends so perfectly. Like when you get to that blue pas, you are exhausted and you're in that feeling already that you find this person that is there for you. And the music, like it just all just happens so naturally.
Yeah, the music does a lot to help you switch from one to the next, and by that point, yes, you are very very tired already. So there's a surrender that happens there. Yeah, but I would say that even though all three ballets are very very different in their approaches and just stylistically and their partnering and stuff, you do draw on the same basic core of technique, and one really informs the other in how you approach it and take things from one, not stylistically, just technically that help each one in themselves.
I want to talk a little bit about Stanton's choreography. So Menenius is Stanton's, and obviously we have a plethora of Stanton works in our repertoire. And maybe Ian, you can start, but I'd love to hear from Beckett and Chase as well. Just what is Stanton's approach to partnering, especially choreographically, and what's unique or maybe influential on how he integrates that into his works? Because I think it's really hard.
Yes, it is hard. It is. I would say, for one thing, he's not afraid to try things. I think he trusts his dancers, and in the studio, especially when you're actually creating something, it's he always says it's a bit like a tennis match. Like you give you an idea, you start with a move, and then naturally it wants to go somewhere, or your particular movement wants to go a direction, then you kind of that's like lobbing the ball back. There's a little bit extra on the end of it. Now we start with that to connect it into something else that maybe wasn't exactly what he had in mind, but that's the direction that it wants to go. Or he does have something very concrete in mind, and then we figure out how to make it work. But all of those little connections are a back and forth, one thing leading into the next, and not being afraid to try new things.
Have you, Chase, just in your experience with Stan's work here, have you seen anything that's really unique about either the actual partnering itself or his approach in the ballets that you've been in?
I just think his partnering is amazing. It's stuff I've never seen before, and so it's so fun because I love to partner, and having that challenge of trying new things and getting to experience it is just so rewarding. That's why I'm so impressed with the Academy, because they get to do his work, and they have already tried all these things I'm trying for the first time right now. Like, they are so ahead of what I was doing when I was their age. But yeah, I just find it so much fun to do.
Anything for you, Beck-Ann, that with Stanton's work and the partnering that's involved in that really stands out?
It just really pushes you to the limit. I feel like with all of his work, it's always, I enjoy it so much. I feel like everyone enjoys it so much because it's just all of you. You use everything you have emotionally, physically. It just is everything. And especially his partnering. I mean, I agree, when I came here, being shocked seeing everyone in the company is doing these crazy lifts, and I was like, what? Like, everyone has to do that, not just one couple? But it's so impressive, and it's so much fun to get to do.
I also think, too, so much of his work is either musically driven or story driven, and in the studio, when you're creating, you can really feel that, and so the idea is very apparent, Yeah. Makes
Any
it fun to
other
create.
wonderful partnering tidbits that you'd like to share with us tonight? I think we've had some great conversation about the range of partnering and all the different connections and mechanics that go through it.
About grips, like watching that video of Ian, like how he grabs her wrist, like you can see his fingers, like it's delicate, like he's not just like this, and like those little things are all a part of it. Like you have to think about all these things while you're partnering it, because it makes a difference in what the audience is perceiving too.
It's so nuanced that it's just so hard because it looks so effortless as an audience. When I watch it as an audience member, I mean, I think it's fascinating to hear all this effort that's going on behind the scenes, the rehearsals and the training and all the conversations, and then it gets on stage and it just flows. And even when it doesn't flow, we probably don't even notice that we didn't even know that it wasn't flowing because it's been covered up. And I thought that was a really interesting topic for us to explore and delve into tonight to see. And we're so fortunate with this program upcoming and the 3 different ballets and Sleeping Beauty that all have such unique and different partnering that hopefully now when you come to the performance, you can see, look at those grips there. I wonder what emotional connection they were talking about when they did that move. So I think great things for us all to be looking out for. But I wanted to now maybe just open it up to the audience. And if you have any questions about partnering or this upcoming program, and I think Jasmine's got a microphone.
This is for Ian Cassidy, please. I remember a ballet that you did a few years ago, just you and a female on stage, and you ended it downstage in a ball. Do you remember that ballet? I just wanted to know the name of the ballet. And you. Well, no, I'm saying it was so good. I remembered it all these years. That's all.
Do you happen to remember music or costumes or anything like that?
Minimal costume.
I mean, let me think about it. Let me see if I can.
It'll come to him.
It might come to me. Yeah, I'll try and remember. Yeah. Okay. No. I'm going through things.
That's
in
a
my
good
head.
trivia
Let me think
question.
about it.
My question is for Ian and Chase. When I'm at the ballet or a dance and I see the men doing lifts after lifts after lifts, I'm thinking, how does your back feel after that performance?
Tired, but hopefully not in pain. If you've been doing things, technically correctly as much as possible. I mean, sometimes, the thing that we're trying to do, there's not a technically correct way to do it. You just have to figure out how to do it without hurting yourself and use your muscles the right way. So I think a lot of times, yes, your back is certainly involved, but we try to keep, if it's a classical ballet and we're just lifting straight overhead, you're definitely using your back and your core a lot. But it's also about alignment and coordination, timing, and making sure that you're not only doing it with your back. You're coordinating your legs. Footwork and the way you use your legs as a male partner is like a whole other thing, and you generally you really have to figure it out ahead of time, coordinate how you want it to work, to facilitate and keep things as smooth as possible.
Yeah, usually it's my shoulders that hurt.
Everybody's different too, if you have stronger shoulders or stronger triceps or stronger chest or whatever. So it's different for everybody.
Chase and Beck, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, I think one of you mentioned the vibes of a pas de deux, specifically reflecting on some of your recent performances like Little Dancer and in The Four Loves. Just from an audience perspective, when I heard something was going to be based off the word eros, I expected something more erotic, and then seeing that instead in Little Dancer, just like, what was the process of going into those and creating that work?
Well, with Eros, it was sort of like Silas had the skeleton that he wanted. So he would say, I want this step, and then we would do that, and it sort of snowballed. But he had the skeleton of what he wanted. And then Little Dancer was actually choreographed on Ian, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Simon.
Ian and Simon, and with Amy. And so we weren't in the process of the creation of Little Dancer, but Ian was able to teach us that.
And for Eros, it was just about love. That's our main objective in that one. And then Little Dancer was just about the sculpting of the Little Dancer. That was the idea behind the pas de deux. And so all like the rocks and the rolls was us molding the clay into making her. Difficult pas de deux. Very difficult pas de deux. It looks very simple, but it hurts so much.
That took a lot of work.
We had some rough days.
Yeah, Ian knows.
And I told them ahead of time too. I said, no, you're going to be sore for like the first week of doing this, just so you know, prepare yourself.
when you were talking about some of the challenges, you used words like mistake and go with the flow and those kind of things. Out of curiosity, is there ever a moment when somebody gets lost in the moment and then it exceeds what you're expecting? It surpasses what was choreographed, and there's actually a sense of delight?
It has happened to me once. I was doing this Killian ballet, and there's this part where you run forward and you go back and do a section, and then you go forward and back, and it must have been like probably a minute and a half in between those two things, but my partner just skipped to the second movement, and so for like 3 minutes, I'm just like in her ear trying to tell her to slow down, because at the end of our pod that all these people come on, and she had no idea what I was saying and had no idea that she messed up, and so it was just like a nightmare the entire time.
I just remember looking on stage and he was just carrying her off the ground. Just run.
She would do a jump and I just like wouldn't put her back on the ground.
Adaptability at its finest.
You guys mentioned Stanton's work pushes the envelope, new challenges, and Becca Ann, you gave one example of the lifts. Are there other concrete examples that makes Stanton's work distinct and more challenging? Innovative and challenging.
I would say he has a lot more press lifts, like overhead lifts, than I'm used to in other choreographers, and ways in and out of those lifts. Like, we do this thing called an angel, which is like the Dirty Dancing lift, which is on her hip, and usually we just bring her down and rock. But here you have to have her lift, do a flip, and then bring her down. So he just adds another element to the difficulty.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of looking to see what can be different, or what you can add to something. Like, where does this go from here? Now we're up in, like you said, now we're up in this lift. Where can we go? What are all the different possibilities? And trying that, and connecting a lot of different elements one after the other. But I think too, in more than just like a pas de deux, but pas de trois, he has a lot of really amazing and innovative pas de trois. There's a ballet he did called Tapestry that has I think, fantastic pas de trois work. For two guys and a girl, where we were literally tossing her in a jeté from one of us to the other, and she's just flying through the air like nothing. So figuring out how to, like, if you could, block out green screen or something, the two guys, you wouldn't even know that they were there, because she just went flying through the air and came down without any kind of, extreme change in shape, or figuring out how to do all those kinds of things. Is definitely one of his strong suits in pas de deux work.
In the last performance of Romeo and Juliet, in the bedroom scene, there was a long coordinated dance which had several one-arm lifts. And of course, for us in the audience, those look incredible. But in a way, the more I think about it, the more I realize you're not really dancing. You simply got your lady on a pillar. And I'm curious about how each of you dancers would feel about, is this something that seems natural, or is it more of a staged event?
Well, I think part of the art of it is taking an element like that, which could just be, you could do with a crane. Sometimes you do get the nickname human crane if you've been doing a lot of lifting and stuff like that. But figuring out how to take an element like that and turn it into dancing, connect it with the story. I think bedroom pas de deux in the third act of Romeo and Juliet, there's one downstage left where they take hands, like they do a couple times in the ballet, and he ends up pressing her as she's got straight arms, and she sort of almost levitates like this, which is an act of strength and coordination and all that. But when you add in the story of it and that feeling that comes from that, I think it becomes dancing, and I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do. So it's not just technical element, but weave them together in a way that's dancing.
All right, so you get done in the studio and everything's going well, and then you do a dress rehearsal. You get on the costumes, and all of a sudden your grips are not right, or it just doesn't feel good to be held, and your hands are slipping or something. Wardrobe has to take over and try to figure out what to do, or do you change what your grip is? And so.
Yeah, you figure out how to make it work. I mean, sometimes there is a costume thing where it's that it didn't work because the costumes didn't fit right, or what, we need a little bit tighter here, or some extra snaps, or the snaps don't work, we need to use buttons or something like that. But you definitely have to adapt, and maybe you might have to figure out a different grip, or a different timing, or a different amount of pressure going into it. But you figure it out and make it work. No, because I think that when the choreographer works with the designer from the beginning, a lot of times they have an idea of what types of things will be happening in that costume, and we do get a chance to work with them in the studio. When things are being built and stuff like that. So we can address some of those things ahead of time, but it's usually a make it work kind of thing.
I think the designer would want to keep the artistic integrity of their designs as much as possible. But I was going to mention just some of the preparation that happens in the studio with your rehearsal garments, because I think that might help. Maybe Becca, you can talk about just different costume elements that you're already putting on in the rehearsal studio. It's not exactly the same, but to help mimic what it's going to look like. Steal Ian's microphone.
Yeah, we have, if you're doing, say, Romeo and Juliet, they'll give us a practice dress that is the slippery knot tied around the waist, so that you can kind of figure out the guy can practice not having more fabric that slides. And then, of course, we have practice tutus. But yeah, I mean, the difference is, I feel like typically once you get on stage with the costumes, the problems are it's just a little heavier and more slippery, or a little longer, just fuller. So those are things, I feel like if it's slippery, the guys will put rosin on their hands, or sometimes we'll even put hairspray, between all the layers of the dress to make it a little stickier for them. I don't know if wardrobe needs to know that we use the hairspray, but we do that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many elements when you get out on stage for that first time that you can't really prepare for. So you are just see how it goes, and then afterwards you can discuss what went right, what went wrong, and how you can help manage it for the next time. Like for Red Earth, you're practicing these long skirts the entire time that you get on stage, and it has this different weight to it. So you're doing these swings, and it's not swinging like you thought it was going to. And so then you do the dress rehearsal, and then you're just backstage trying it over and over again, trying to figure out how that piece of fabric works.
Usually the shock element the first time is the worst, knock on wood, but yeah.
What about in a corps de ballet situation where you are changing partners throughout the choreography, but you're maybe doing more or less the same dance movements, same dance steps? Any experience with that when you're like, I prefer him rather than him?
I mean, yes. There's always people, I guess, you prefer more than the other. But I feel like whenever it's a core group dance, I mean, yeah, it's difficult jumping from person to person, but it's usually pretty quick is how I feel, and you have your certain steps and timing, and that always helps.
No, just that it's practice. We practice in the studio. If it's a dance where the partners are changing, within the dance, then it's just practice. And you also, sometimes people have to go in for people where there's an injury or someone's sick or where, so you get practice adapting also. Just like ballet class every morning is practice at learning, and as in addition to your refining technique and maintaining your body, but it's also practice for learning choreography. So it's an everyday kind of skill that you just slowly develop. I don't think really think about it too much. It just becomes part of the deal.
Well, great. Well, do we want to do one more question? Bonus.
I was wondering just about the casting, like I'm sure you all, how do the pairs shape up?
I feel like our first rehearsal, they just say, okay, you with that person, you with that person, you with that person, and that's how you find out. And maybe sometimes it does switch after like a day or two. They'll say, okay, let me just see you two together. But usually they have it prepared on their end before they come into the studio.
Probably a question for Stanton and Julie.
I think you start with who you think will be compatible, physically compatible, chemistry, all that kind of thing, and then you try it out in the studio. And sometimes choreographers do come in and they swap people around because they want to see what different combinations look like and how people interact, and it's trial and error.
That's a great question for Stanton and Julie. Well, I think that's our time for tonight. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight and just for your continued support of Houston Ballet and the work that we do. And I hope to see you in the theater for our In the Night program opening, I believe, February 27th, so very, very soon. But thank you for joining us tonight. Drive safe. Hopefully the rain has stopped on your way home.